On today's show, Kevin Durant scores 26 points to lead the Rockets in their win against the Clippers, how Houston used an impressive third quarter to be able to put this game away. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. On today's show, we're talking about the Rockets' 102-95 win against the Clippers. A good, solid all-around win. 26 points from Kevin Durant, 22 from Alperen Şengün, a very efficient 16 points from Amen Thompson, 16 points from Reed Shepard, also off the bench. Good balanced scoring approach in this game, strong defense, a good third quarter that really helped put the Clippers away, at least for a while. We'll talk about how the floor kind of fell out in the fourth quarter. We'll get to all the different angles from this game, as well as Kevin Durant continuing to make history in a Rockets jersey. Fred VanVleet joining the guys in the booth, Ryan Hollins and Craig Ackerman. It was great to hear from Steady Freddy on the microphone during the broadcast. That was a lot of fun. Going to get to all of that on today's show. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Now, where we're going to start is on the surface, looking at this game, it doesn't look like anything crazy impressive if you're just box score watching. It's, 102-95 final score, 7-point game, against a Clippers team that clearly just went through a fire sale. Yes, they're playing some good basketball, or have been, but they just lost James Harden. They just lost Zubac. Like, they're clearly undergoing a lot of change and embarking upon a new franchise direction. But you still can't take the Clippers lightly. They have a strong assortment of talent. And on any given night, when certain guys decide they want to wind back the clocks a little bit, Clippers can still be a very, very dangerous team. This is just a solid win. And I think the major takeaway from this one is that the Rockets were able to put together a really strong third quarter, both offensively and defensively. And that third quarter, as well as some of the action that we saw at the top of the fourth quarter, that stretch of the game is what won them this game. Kevin Durant was kind of struggling in the first half of this one and woke up in a big way in the third quarter. Alperen Şengün had a strong third quarter. Each of those guys, Kevin Durant led the way with 11 points in the third quarter. I'm confirming that. Yeah, 11 in the third. 11 in the third from KD, 9 in the quarter from Alperen Şengün. So those guys combining for 20 of the Rockets, 27 points in that frame on a combined 8 of 11 shooting. So they both kind of locked in, were able to start knocking down some serious shots. And it was at the end of the quarter, Alperen Şengün had a pair of back-to-back buckets. And then at the top of the fourth quarter, there was a run where it started with a DFS three-pointer and then an Amen Thompson transition dunk. And then you had Şengün run across a little kind of cross-screen post-up action, and he hits a hook shot. And at that point, the lead balloons up to 85-72. At that point, it was the biggest lead for the Rockets in the game. It was an 11-0 run dating back to the end of the third quarter. And so it was that kind of stretch into the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter, where the Rockets offense was clicking on all cylinders. And in the fourth quarter, across the first 6 minutes of the quarter, the Clippers were held to just 1 of 10 shooting and only 5 points in that entire span. So Rockets lead balloons out, and they're flirting with a 15-point lead that, Clippers hit a bucket, then Rockets come right back down, hit another bucket. At one point, Reed Shepard cooked Splash Mountain. That was fun. But it was kind of a point where the Rockets used that surge at the end of the third quarter and the lockdown defense and their ability to still continue generating decent offense at the top of the fourth quarter to create the separation that they needed in this game to be able to pull out the win. Because on paper, it's not like they had a crazy 35-point, 40-point scoring quarter or anything. They scored 27 in the first, 24 in the second. Then they scored 27 in the third and then 24 in the fourth. So they had identical, 51 point halves in the first half and the second half. It's just about the timing and where these runs ultimately occurred in the given like kind of context of the game. And also defensively being able to hold the Clippers to just the 20 points in the third quarter. So you won that quarter +7. And then the defense for the first 6 or 7 minutes or so of the fourth quarter was really impressive. And the Clippers were they were kind of playing lifeless at that point. Like once the game had opened up that much, the guys that Ty Lue had in the game kind of looked like they were basically rolling over and just waiting for Lue to wave the white flag. And funny enough, Lue waves the white flag and suddenly his white flag lineup actually makes it a bit of a game again. Rockets had a moment there where it looked like we might be headed for one of those really rough collapses offensively. The Clippers mounted a not insignificant 8-0 run to cut the score to 94-87 late there in the fourth quarter. And the Rockets went scoreless for a stretch of about 3 minutes where they just could not put the ball in the hoop. And they were getting some decent looks. It's not like it was garbage possession after garbage possession. There were some of those mixed in there, but they had decent looks at it. The offense just completely dried up. But because they had built themselves up that lead, because they had built themselves up that cushion when shots were falling, and they didn't take the foot off the gas defensively. They were still focused and fighting hard on that end of the floor. They were able to stall the Clippers out long enough. That 8-0 run cut the score 94-87. They were within striking distance for sure. Reed Shepard finally was able to break the seal and knock down his fourth and final three-pointer of the game to push the lead back out 97-87. And it was a beautiful possession. And shout out to Ime Udoka for closing with Reed Shepard in this game because of the struggles from Tari Eason in this one. It was not a great Tari game, unfortunately. So Reed Shepard gets the closing honors in this one. He's out there in crunch time. And the play that actually gave Reed Shepard that shot, right? It's a play that I've talked about a lot here in recent days on the podcast. Kevin Durant, primary ball handler, Alperen Şengün, ball screen, Jabari Smith Jr. on the left wing or left corner, Reed Shepard, right corner, and Amen Thompson hanging out in the dunker spot. And they ran that action to a T. Alperen Şengün catches the ball on the short roll. He makes a play towards the basket. And then Amen Thompson cuts in towards the hoop. Reed Shepard's in the corner. The defender has to make a choice. Do I stay with Amen Thompson? Do I jump back out and tag Reed Shepard on the perimeter? Defender goes for Amen Thompson. Şengün, sprays the pass out to Reed. Corner three, bang, bang. And it's simple basketball, but it works really well when executed properly, and it looks really good. And that seems like the kind of go-to set for the Rockets when they want to generate some high-quality offense. You put Şengün in the short roll, you put Amen Thompson in the dunker spot, and generally good things have happened. Overall, solid performance. They were able to, put enough points on the board and close this thing out there at the end. They gave themselves the buffer in order to do so. We'll get into some of the other elements of this game. The one kind of major adjustment or correction that the Rockets made in the third quarter that helped them balloon the lead out and kind of go on that run to take control of the game. We'll talk about the individual performances in this one, as well as Kevin Durant making history once again in a Rockets jersey, and Fred VanVleet in the booth operating with Craig and Ryan. We'll get to all of that here in just one moment. First, today's episode was brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move, because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria like skills, certifications, and location. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. Pulling up the Game Time app, picking an upcoming game, and getting tickets is so simple. You can have your tickets secured within minutes. My favorite part is the all-in price up front. They are fully transparent from start to finish with your pricing, so you don't get price gouged at the end. No hidden fees, no surprise fees at checkout, full transparency from start to finish. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Thanks for making Locked On Rockets your first listen of the day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free version of Locked On Rockets compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. And you get an invite to our members-only Locked On Rockets Everydayer Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. We're trying to build that up over there. So if you're interested, tap the link in the episode description to learn more. All right, continuing on here, talking about the Rockets' 102-95 win against the Clippers. And one major thing that stood out in this game, and Fred was even commenting on this during the second quarter while he was in the booth. Shout out to Steady Freddy. And it was kind of cool to see Fred kind of highlighting, you know, the way that he was seeing the game and things that he was noticing in real time, right? But the turnovers for this Rockets team, they wound up committing 10 first half turnovers. Thankfully, though, the Clippers were not doing a great job of capitalizing on said turnovers. But we've seen times where this Rockets team cannot hold on to the basketball, and it winds up really hurting them once the other team is able to, you know, start forcing some of those turnovers, forcing some of the sloppy play, getting out and running in transition, that kind of thing. The Rockets wound up only committing one turnover in the, I apologize, two turnovers in the entire third quarter. There's one from KD and one from Jabari. I had it in my notes as one, but basically cleaning up the turnovers helped a ton, right? By prioritizing those possessions and getting quality possessions every time down in the third quarter. That's what allowed them to put up the 27 points and also limit the Clippers on the other side of the ball. They held them to 40% shooting from the floor, only 33% from downtown. Just a strong overall defensive quarter by the Rockets while simultaneously taking care of the basketball and generating solid enough offense across the board in their own right. They wound up shooting 52% from the floor in the third, 66% from downtown. They only attempted 2 out of 3 threes, which was a little weird given the 3-point volume earlier in the game. Like the volume of threes was better early on in the game, and it kind of waned as the game progressed, but they still wound up winning the math advantage on the 3-ball as well. Clippers only hit 8 threes, 8 of 30 in this game. Rockets hit 14 threes, 14 of 28. So back to some of the ways that they were shooting the ball earlier in the season, back still low 3-point volume, but higher conversion rate on the threes, which is encouraging to see. Hopefully it's a trend that sticks with this team post All-Star break, or at least into this next Clippers game, and then also sticks with the team post All-Star break. But by limiting those turnovers, right, you're not giving teams the ammunition to ignite transition opportunities and get out on the fast break and get guys going. And you look at the numbers, Rockets wound up committing 18 turnovers for the game. The Clippers only scored 17 points off of those 18 turnovers. And then on the opposite side, Rockets only forced 12 Clippers turnovers, but they scored 19 points off of those 12 turnovers. The Rockets actually did a decent job in this game of getting out and playing in the open court, getting out and playing in transition a little bit, which is not something we've seen this team do a lot of this season. But when they do it, it generates some easy shots, right? And, you know, they need to be willing to and able to run a bit more with Amen Thompson, which was something that I believe Rafael Stone and Ime Udoka highlighted during their recent press conference is, you know, Amen he's a one-man fast break ready to start at a moment's notice, but guys need to run with him to capitalize on some of those opportunities. And it looked like the Rockets did a better job in this game of having guys running with Amen in transition, or just running in transition in general, right? Like the Rockets just played with a significant level of urgency when they got a good stop trying to get out and run against an old Clippers team, right? It is the oldest team in the NBA. Even I believe they're still the oldest team in the NBA, even after making the trades that they've made. Maybe they've dropped down a couple pegs, but like there's not a lot of juice left in some of those Clippers legs on the other side of the aisle, right? So you want to try and run them out of the gym and up the tempo a little bit, rather than allowing them to play their, slow it down, half court heavy brand of basketball where you work it inside and out with Kawhi Leonard and Benedict Mathurin, that kind of stuff. So solid in that regard in the third quarter. And again, it was weird watching like the Clippers B team, C team squad come in with all that energy and trying to make it a game later on. Thankfully, the Rockets were able to ultimately hold off just enough. And it was, credit to, I remain continuously impressed watching Kevin Durant, how he can struggle as bad as he did to start a given game. I think he was 1 for 8 to start, like ice cold start for KD, 1 for 8. Which means he finished the game 7 for 14. So he starts the game 1 of 8, and then he proceeds to shoot 50% the rest of the way. Like there are so many games that happen just like that, where KD, starts off a little colder, and then he finds himself, catches a rhythm at some point throughout the game. And then once KD's on, he's not really off again. He's just on from that point forward. And I did appreciate, there were a couple stretches of this game where, Rockets needed a shot. They needed a bucket. They needed a high quality possession. Kevin Durant was a little bit more demonstrative about demanding the basketball at certain points in this game. There were a couple possessions just where the Rockets were trying to get into their set, and KD's just like floating near the top of the key. And he's like, forget a set. Just get me the ball. Like just give me the ball and I'm going to do what I do. Right. And that's how I think KD needs to be a little bit more often, right? You don't need him like issuing crazy demand of the ball to where it's uncomfortable for the other guys, to where guys aren't playing their own game. You want guys just playing within the flow of the offense, not walking the ball up every time thinking, where's KD? I got to get it to Kevin, right? Kevin's got to get a touch. And striking that balance is really hard, right? The Rockets are still finding their chemistry with KD. But when he's more vocal about it, right, when he demands the ball as opposed to, I guess, kind of fading into the background for multiple possessions in a row, some of that is due to the youth of the Rockets, right, and them not finding KD. And Fred talked about this as well when he was in the booth, is, there's stretches where, Kevin goes too long without touching the ball. Or there's stretches where, it's too difficult for him because the defense is loading up on him considerably and he's not getting, help from one of his teammates to kind of get him in one of his spots where he's not having to do all the heavy lifting to, I guess, set up or initiate the offense. And hearing Fred kind of, highlighting that, talking about that, and talking about what he's seeing and what he's hoping to be able to do whenever he does ultimately return to the Rockets, encouraging stuff to kind of hear there. But overall, strong bounce back from Kevin Durant after really struggling kind of in the first half of this game. Big third quarter, 11 of his 26 in that frame, to be able to kind of lead the Rockets and piecing it together with kind of like just a solid, like if you looked at this box score as far as the shot distribution and the offensive shot quality, how they generated offense, who participated and where, this feels like what you would hope a prototypical Rockets win will look like for this team moving forward, right? It wasn't like a scorching, I guess 50% from 3 is pretty impressive, but this Rockets team's been one of the better 3-point shooting teams all year. So like that's not something that I guess you think is completely unsustainable, but just seeing the shot distribution is the most important part, because if Kevin has an even halfway normal game efficiency wise, then this game looks like much more of a blowout than it actually felt like. But 22 shots for KD, 11 for Jabari, 10 for Tari, 14 for Şengün, 10 for Amen, and then 10 shots for Reed Shepard off the bench. That feels like a really evenly spread out shot distribution chart. And Kevin struggled offensively in this one. Tari struggled offensively in this one. The other guys were able to kind of make up that slack a little bit. But if you could dial in on this shot distribution every game moving forward, I feel like it lends itself to a lot more success than it will disappointment, because if you can get Kevin 20 plus shots a night, and if you're getting that, anywhere from 12 to 20 points off the bench from Reed Shepard's scoring off the bench is so vital for this team because they're not really getting much scoring out of Capela or DFS on most nights. And sometimes Okogie checks in with his energy, his hustle, and he can be a little bit of a scoring boost off the bench as well. But this is where, the injuries have kind of devastated the Rockets to where they just don't have that scoring pop or that consistent scoring pop off the bench. They really have to lean on their starters very, very heavily throughout the course of a given game. But encouraging offensive approach to this one. I do want to talk about some of the things that we noticed in this game offensively, as well as getting to final thoughts from this one. Kevin Durant breaking yet another milestone in his career as a member of the Houston Rockets, and more. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years, and that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about the most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. Speed skating races decided by mere inches. Hockey games that feel different right from the opening faceoff. Even niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, one thing that stood out offensively from this game, and shout out to Ime pregame, because he was asked about, the possibility of ever doing a starting lineup switch, but I think the question was specifically keyed in towards switching Amen Thompson for Reed Shepard, which I don't think would ever happen. Ime loves Amen way too much, and Amen is way too impactful. But, had the question maybe been presented in a slightly different light, right, of like, would Reed Shepard ever get back into the starting lineup, i.e. in place of like Jabari or Tari, then maybe the answer would have been slightly different. But the answer instead was not now, if ever, which came across a lot more harsh from Ime, which I don't think was his intent. I think he was just being matter-of-fact about it because Ime is a very matter-of-fact individual. But it was great to see kind of both Rockets guards having some success in this game. Amen Thompson, 16 points, 6 of 10 shooting, did a lot of damage playing off the ball, I'll admit. Right, like this is, and maybe it is kind of a notable shift from the coaching staff. Maybe they're keying in on certain things and realizing they need to go back to playing that identity. But the really key play from Reed Shepard, his three that I highlighted earlier, some of the other possessions throughout the game from Amen Thompson, he's playing out of the dunker spot, playing off the ball. Still plenty of possessions with him on ball, and still some possessions that unfortunately look less than stellar. There's no pretty points awarded for some of those possessions with him running two-man game, pick and roll with Alperen Şengün on the perimeter. But it's also encouraging to know that Amen Thompson's mentality towards it, he was asked about how teams are guarding him and what they're doing to try and take him out and shut down the offense post-game. And he basically said, let them guard me however, I don't care. And he kind of walked it off with that quote too. So I'm sure that he sees and hears some of the noise about his game and about what defenses are doing to him and to the Rockets by extension. As long as the mentality is there, though, he has all the tools to still be a problem for teams, especially when they're guarding him in open space. Because if Amen Thompson gets open space on the perimeter, he should, in theory, be able to drive downhill and force the issue and draw a foul or collapse the defense and still create for a teammate. Like, there's still options there. It just requires a little bit more creativity from the coaching staff, from him, to figure things out. And again, there is the default of just, hey, if we don't want to be susceptible to this style of defense, if we don't want to get exposed the way we have in the past, we can default to a very specific type of action or a specific set that involves having a man in the dunker spot. And it makes it a lot harder for teams to then have their big man just roaming around ready to blow up, a Kevin Durant ISO or an Alperen Şengün ISO, right? You space the defense out, you get Şengün in the short roll, and it's really, really, really hard to guard when you do that. I I wish the Rockets spammed that action more than they currently do. It feels like it would result in some more consistent offense at times. But I'll take what I can get at this point, and seeing them do it more is still encouraging. Also, really stellar game from Reed Shepard. Like, getting the 3-ball back is huge for Reed. 16 points, 6 of 10 shooting, identical to Amen Thompson's stat line, but he was 4 of 6 from downtown, 2 of 4 inside the charity stripe, or inside, not the charity stripe, the 3-point line, to go along with 6 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals, a block. Did have 4 turnovers. And, a couple of them were, maybe some miscues from Reed Shepard, right? Things you want to see him clean up. But again, it's, as a young player like that, is getting a feel for the game and understanding where and how to pass the ball. Man, I like seeing the cross-court passes that Reed Shepard makes when the defense is like completely tilted towards trying to stop him, and wherever the tilted towards the strong side of the ball, trying to slow down whatever action the Rockets are running. Seeing him identify that, be able to whip a pass all the way across the court. On this current team, Kevin Durant and Reed are the only 2 guys that are capable of making that pass. Like, they're the only 2 guys I've seen make that pass all season. JD Davison might have had like 1 or 2, and Amen Thompson might have had like 1 or 2 sporadically here or there. But the 2 guys who consistently make that cross-court read, which is like a next level read when you're coming out of the pick and roll, are Kevin Durant and Reed Shepard. And KD sometimes telegraphs his, right, where he sends him straight through the hands of a defender and ignites a fast break. Shout out to the 5 turnovers from KD in this one. It didn't wind up hurting the Rockets too much, but it's definitely something that needs cleaning up moving forward. And Fred was harping on that too on the broadcast as well. Speaking of Fred on the broadcast, man, he had the quote of the night was Fred talking about just kind of what he's seeing and how he would evaluate this season. And here it goes. It might be a little loud. I apologize, but
I think we're in good shape. I think everybody need to chill out.
I think we're in good shape. I think everybody needs to chill out. Fred was talking about being on Twitter and seeing what all the fans are saying. He's got more downtime than ever, and how Kevin Durant's a bad influence because now Fred's on Twitter even more. So the Twitter sphere is going strong with the Rockets locker room apparently at this point. But like these are kind of the performances the Rockets need moving forward, right? You got your star performances from KD and Şengün. Şengün with 22, 7, and 5 assists, 9 of 14 shooting. He had some really good power plays on the inside, got multiple dunks in this game. Had one where he just completely bulldozed Brook Lopez, like driving baseline, got straight into Brook's chest, powered him back, and then scored right up at the rim. Like, this was a strong performance from the newly anointed, by the way, because I've seen a couple of people who got upset that I hadn't mentioned it yet on the show, and I apologize. I had it in my notes at the top of the last show, and I just spaced on it. But congratulations to Alperen Şengün being selected to his second All-Star team as a replacement pick, which still counts, still shows up on his resume as him being an All-Star. Hopefully moving forward, right, that, Şengün can just be a undeniable All-Star, right? Not having to rely on, I guess, the injury policy to get him squeaked in there at the last second, but still an honor nonetheless, one that Şengün deserved for his play this season. I think because of kind of the drop-off since the calendar year turned to 2026, some of his struggles in January kind of impacted, I think, his standing in the voting process. But it's good to see him back to playing the level of basketball that we know he's capable of playing on a nightly basis. And I think that Şengün deserves a ton of credit for kind of responding to the criticism from Ime Udoka, right? Ime Udoka hasn't been shy about being very direct and critical of Alperen Şengün in his career, which is, I think, something that Şengün, very early on in his career, right? He wanted that level of like harsh reality from Stephen Silas, but Silas just wasn't equipped to give him what he needed as a coach. And so having Ime really pushing Alperen Şengün, I think fans kind of perceived it one way when Ime talked about Şengün, being targeted constantly in pick and roll, and that it's no different since when he got here. And, that comment kind of did the rounds amongst Rockets fans after the Hornets game. And I think that there were a lot of fans that took exception to it, and they're like, here goes Ime again, throwing his players under the bus and this, that, and the other thing. And, I think that with Alp, he really does value the directness of Ime Udoka and being challenged to be better. And I think that Ime also holds Alp to a significant standard because he knows what he's capable of, right? He holds him to the standard of a superstar, because that's the talent level that Alperen Şengün has. And you wouldn't want any less from your head coach. You wouldn't want any less from one of your star players, right? You don't want Ime to have to bend the rules and expect, oh, well, Şengün can try a little less on defense because he's doing so much for us on offense, right? Like, I think that mentality does pay dividends for Alpi, and seeing how he's been able to kind of respond from that moment. Obviously, first the OKC game where he was awesome, and then this game against the Clippers, and hopefully carrying that mentality moving forward. Now, the one downside to Şengün being selected as an all-star is now he's going to participate in the all-star game. So he doesn't get like the straight week and a half off of rest that we were hoping he would get, to make sure that he's like 100% physically right coming into the final kind of marathon stretch of the Rockets season. But not the end of the world, right? I mean, the all-star game is going to be, I don't know. We'll see if it's a joke, or we'll see if like the world stars come out and they're just like, world star. No, I kid. We'll see how they come out and what the mentality is like. We know that like last year, right? Like Wemby was, a lot more locked in and trying to treat it like a real game. Like he wants to bring some of the competition back to it, which Wemby's kind of a cornball most of the time, but I do respect his desire to want to make the All-Star game competitive for the fans. I don't know if he'll ever get guys to buy into it, but, you also, maybe there's a little bit of like international pride at stake here too, where like the American hoopers don't want to get shown up by the international hoopers. Although, man, the international team, even without some of the guys who are out due to injuries, Shea and Giannis, the international squad still looks damn good on paper compared to the USA squad. So hopefully if the guys take it seriously, then we should be in store for a fun kind of dynamic. I don't know. I gave up putting stock in All-Star Weekend years ago. Like I'll watch it, but I'm not going to hold my breath for it to be like amazing or exciting or any of that stuff. Also, shout out to Reed Shepard, who will be participating in the Rising Stars game again on the other side of the aisle, this time as a sophomore. And this is the first pair of Rockets All-Star teammates, Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün, since James Harden and Russell Westbrook. Back in that 1 year, the one Russ year, all those many moons ago, all those years ago. God, I went down that crazy tangent just talking about Alperen. I apologize. I wanted to like highlight it and get to talking about it at some point. I just figured I'd slide it in or talk about it right there. But elsewhere in this way, like one other thing that did kind of stand out is like I was pontificating and wondering like what this team would look like offensively, once they brought Amen Thompson back, right? And I think that offensively things looked pretty smooth this game. Like it felt like there was more intention behind some of the off-ball movement. Things weren't as stagnant offensively. There were still plenty of stretches where you get KD ISO, you get Şengün ISO on the perimeter, like still plenty of those moments throughout the game. But I think the Rockets were a lot more intentional about some of their actions away from the basketball, trying to run some off-ball, screens and whatnot to get some open threes. And it really felt like they were generating threes at a pretty consistent clip earlier in the game. And then that kind of, I don't say it dried up. I think they just got a little bit more aggressive about getting downhill and scoring and whatnot. And Kevin Durant with his milestone achievement. Sorry, that's where I was like, I know there was one more thing I was supposed to talk about here. Kevin Durant in this game scored his 1,000th career 20-point game. Only 3 other players have done this in NBA history, and that's LeBron James, Karl Malone, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Elite company for Kevin to be a part of. Also, multiple of the names that he's still chasing on the all-time scoring list, in addition to Michael Jordan as well, being ahead of him a little bit on that list. Just absurd stuff to be able to witness from Kevin Durant on a nightly basis for this Rockets team, and what he's still able to do at his current age, and what he'll hopefully be able to continue doing for at least 2 to 3 more years remains very, very exciting. I will say there's 2 other random notes that I have here that I'll log here at the very tail end of the episode. At one point during the Fred interview, he was talking about like the offensive rebounds and yada, yada, but I could have sworn he called it mall ball when he was talking about the offensive rebounds. And if that's what they call it internally, if that's what the Rockets call that version or that identity of basketball, calling it mall ball, where they're just mauling the opposing team out there, I'm all for it. I need to confirm, and I will try and confirm if he called it mall ball. But I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And if I misheard it and now we're coining it, then fine. We can take credit for Terror Twins here at LOR, and we can take credit for mall ball if that's not what Fred VanVleet said. And then I wanted to give a little bit of credit to Jabari Smith Jr. because this was a really solid Jabari game, especially juxtaposed to some of the struggles from Tari in this one. Tari just 6 points, 2 of 10 shooting. He's been the Rockets' best, most lethal three-point shooter all season, though. So enjoy the night off Tari. Not the end of the world. Other guys were able to step up and take care of the offense. But Jabari, just a quietly strong game. 13 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block. 4 of 11 shooting, 2 of 3 from downtown. Like, not a phenomenal game by the numbers, especially the offensive efficiency. You know, he dribbled into some pull-ups that were maybe not the best, and you would have liked to see Jabari take a few more threes than just 3 attempts, right? He needs to be one of those volume three-point shooters for this Rockets squad. But he had a sequence where he got an offensive rebound into a kick out for a Kevin Durant 3, and then he got a block on the other side of the on the ball, and then that block turned into, I believe, a Tari Eason three-pointer at one point. It was just a good little sequence and just a solid kind of game for Jabari overall. So I'm curious your thoughts on this Rockets win against the Clippers. How did you feel about the win? What stood out to you about this game? Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Hopefully they're able to get it done again once more against this team, as the Rockets are still in the running for the 40-20 break point for contenders. Over 90% of all NBA title teams in the last however many X number of years have all won 40 games before hitting 20 losses. And that is still a reality for this Rockets team. They've got to go 7-0 now. It was 8-0 before this game. 7-0 to be able to hit 40 wins before 20 losses. But if the Rockets team starts to gel, if they're able to use some momentum from these 2 Clippers games going into All-Star break and then come out of the gate swinging on the other side, still certainly a possibility. Again, I want your thoughts in the YouTube comments, but as always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.